Now, something's changed about the politics of this issue today, most definitely federally. The Federal Labor Party has decided to go on the political attack. Christina Keneally held a media conference to attack the federal government over the Ruby Princess, even though it was primarily a state government failure, as I've just explained. But more importantly, after the upscaling of advice last night to the nation, warning us to stay home if we can and imposing restrictions on gatherings, after all that, the Opposition Leader Anthony Albanese called the media together today to say this.
Australians are confused. They're confused that teachers can't have a wedding with more than 5 people at them, but they're expected to teach entire classes of more than 25 students.
Well, as Albo would know, there are state and premiers on that national committee. There's state premiers who are Labor and Liberal involved in all those decisions that are made by the National Cabinet. Now, this is a complex issue and there are complicated responses and everything is evolving and there are many areas where judgement and compromise are required. But there's a fine line here between calling out confusion and adding to it. And the media is part of that too.
There are still some people today who are a little bit confused. Parents, do I send my kid to school, do I not? Some small businesses who don't fall very specifically into some of those categories. The categories in terms of I should close, right, so maybe a small jeweller or a nursery for plants and so on, people just are still confused what to do. Would just a lockdown for a time be a good idea so that unequivocally it's clear we need to just all lock down, we need to control this now?
Last night you told Australians to stay home except for essential school, work, grocery shopping, health or exercise. This morning the government texted people who are sick to stay home. While obviously it's more urgent that sick people get that message, don't you think that lack of detail this morning undermines the very clear advice you gave last night?
Now, there are plenty of people calling for stronger measures and certainly governments, federal and state, are flagging an increasing scale of measures. The text message that went out to the nation today has said to keep your distance from people, follow the rules on social gatherings, wash your hands and stay home altogether if you're sick. It's not that complicated.
The most urgent message that we're getting for people to stay home is to stay home if you're sick. That is the most important, urgent message. It is also important that people should stay home when they're in self-isolation. And as I said last night, our preference and our instruction is more generally, stay home unless you're going out for essential.
And to be frank, even though we know that one state, Victoria, is pushing for tougher measures sooner, and that's exactly the sort of dynamic we would expect to play out in this crisis. It's precisely why there is a national cabinet, why it's useful. The Premier of another Labor state, Queensland, has praised Scott Morrison and the national cabinet for the way it's working effectively.
I want to commend the Prime Minister for establishing the National Cabinet. I've never seen such cooperation. I've often said that we all work best when we work together, but it is so encouraging to see all of the leaders come together with the best interests of their people at heart.
That tends to undercut Anthony Albanese's political attacks. And for what it's worth, the people I meet and speak to day in and day out are not confused. Some support the measures we've got at the moment, some want tougher measures, some want fewer restrictions. But what they all know is that what they're expected to do. They all seem to have a good grasp of what they're expected to do. And on the whole, they're doing it. There are exceptions, of course, but the reality I see around me is not panic and confusion, but a country sensibly dealing with a difficult crisis, helping each other, supporting each other, working our way through. We'd want to, because there's a long way to go. And that's my point. Mainstream Australians know what's required here. Communication remains important, and of course no leader can be perfect in this environment, but the media and political opponents shouldn't be creating confusion or adding to it. They'd be better off helping to improve communications and assist with clarity.